What if I told you that in the middle of South Africa, 30 years after the system of apartheid has officially ended, a whites-only separatist town is not only allowed to exist, but is thriving and flourishing? Sounds wild, right? However, that is exactly what I witnessed in Orania last week when I decided to visit this extremely controversial place. I was curious to learn and understand what drives a white minority living in a black country to isolate themselves from the rest of society, and how it feels like to be in a whites-only separatist town as a black person. And what I experienced there, just to make it short, I didn't expect that at all. So in today's episode, I want to share my shocking experience in Orania with you, and also some interesting and at times infuriating conversations that I had with random people on the streets. My name is Wayne. Thanks for tuning in to my channel Plan B Back to Africa, where I share my experience on traveling the beautiful continent of Mama Africa together with my two children, while exploring attractive and potential places to settle for the African diaspora who seeks to start a new life on the continent. And I also share my knowledge on investment opportunities on the continent. So if you want to stay up to date, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell. With that being said, let's dive straight into today's topic, Orania. Let's start with a few interesting facts. Orania was found in 1991 by Afrikaners, but don't let the term Afrikaner fool you. The Afrikaners are the descendants of the first Dutch settlers who arrived at the Cape of Good Hope in 1652 and dominated South African politics and its economy until 1994. Today, the Afrikaners make up only 5% of the South African population, and they are even recognized as an ethnic minority in the country, which gives them the right to self-determination according to international law. The 8,000 hectare site along the Orange River where Orania was found was bought by Professor Karel Boshoff, the son-in-law of Hendrik Verwoerd, who was the former Prime Minister of South Africa and is considered as the architect of apartheid. Back then, when Orania was found, many South Africans were laughing about the first dozen settlers, thinking they wouldn't last long in this dusty Karoo semi-desert. Nobody took them seriously. However, today, Orania has more than 4,000 residents, a long waiting list with more than 15,000 people who wish to relocate there and applied for citizenship. Afrikaans, which is derived from Dutch, is the only recognized and official language in Orania. And Orania is also the only stand-alone municipality in South Africa. Don't ask me how they did it, but they managed to get this status in the early 2000s, which means they don't pay taxes to the South African government, and they also receive no funding. They basically managed to create their own state within South Africa, and they even have their own currency called the Ora, which converts 1-to-1 to the South African rand. Everything in Orania is solar powered because solar water heating installations are compulsory for all new buildings, which greatly contributes to the high level of self-sufficiency. In addition, the residents have to separate their rubbish into 5 different containers for recycling. Agriculture is one of the main pillars of Orania's economy. For instance, in 2010, they exported 90 tons of pecan nuts to China. What I also found fascinating about this place is the fact that there is no unemployment. Everyone has a job and they will not hire outside labor. So even the low-paid jobs, the women who clean the toilets, the waiters, the street sweepers, the construction workers, you name it, everyone is white and from Orania. Orania strives to become a popular tourist destination in the future, so they already have a 4-star hotel and they have even recently established an aviation school. Last but not least, the town boasts having no crime and no need for a police department, which is unbelievable considering the fact that they are located in South Africa, one of the most dangerous countries in the world, known for its high crime rate. The fact that Orania is so safe gave me the confidence to go and visit this place and just see for myself, because I love to engage with different people who have totally different opinions, just listen to them, try to understand them. And so I did my proper research. Everyone assured me that I will be safe. So my biggest concern was not my safety, but I rather expected that people will not be willing to engage in a conversation with me, that they will view me with suspicion and be very unfriendly towards me. However, what I eventually experienced during my visit in Orania, I didn't expect that at all. Of course, before arriving there, I had some conversations with my children about this topic. They are very well aware of issues like racism and apartheid because we have spent quite some time not only in South Africa but on the African continent in general. And I always teach my children about colonialism, slavery, as the legacy is still alive, right? And for instance, a couple of weeks ago, we visited the Apartheid Museum where they first learned about this dark chapter of South Africa's past or present. Because unfortunately, apartheid, as in the case of Orania, is still alive and well in South Africa. Anyways, so my children, they couldn't care less. They were like, okay, why don't we leave these people in their dusty desert? Why do we have to go there? Of course, they don't understand the mind of an anthropologist and my curiosity. But as long as they are safe, and I promised them, we will not spend long time there, maybe an hour, and then we will continue our journey because we were actually on a road trip from Johannesburg to Cape Town. And since Orania was on the way to Cape Town, I decided to do a stop over there. So we started our journey in the early mornings from Bloemfontein, a beautiful city where we stayed overnight to take some rest. And we drove around 3 hours through the most beautiful landscape of the Karoo semi-desert. I can really recommend this route, whether you want to go to Orania or not. Just make sure you rent a good SUV because the roads are quite bad. When we finally arrived in Orania, there is a street sign which reads, "Welcome in Orania." So I asked my daughter to take some pictures of me. I parked the car at the roadside, and while she was taking pictures of me, cars were passing by, all white people, of course, from Orania, and I was so surprised. They were all greeting us, smiling at us, waving at us. And I told my daughter, "You see, Makeda, aren't the people nice? That's really surprising, right?" Her response got me on my knees. I died. This girl is the most funniest girl I know. She told me, "Haha, mommy, don't get it twisted. These people are waving you to tell you good luck surviving in our city and we see you in hell." Oh my God. I couldn't stop laughing, fam. I was like, did you really just say that? I love her sense of humor. Anyways, we drove around the town. It's a very small town. And we continued having this experience. People were greeting us. Everyone was so friendly and open for a chat. But I must say, I quickly realized that the racism runs deep in this town. And at this point, it is very important for me to explain that there is a difference between racist thinking and perception and racial discrimination. The racial discrimination is in fact the action that follows from racist thinking. So the chance that you as a non-South African Black person will experience racial discrimination in Orania is very low, I would say. Because the people that I had conversations with, throughout the day, it was always stressed that they don't discriminate anyone and that everyone is welcome to visit Orania. But just because you don't discriminate doesn't mean you cannot be racist. And the first person that I talked to during my visit in Orania is a perfect example of this. Watch what this man, who repeatedly said that they don't discriminate, had to say about black people in South Africa. Watch this.
You've seen what happens when a South African black goes into a town. He makes a glorious mess. He steals everything. He breaks everything. They're destructive. They don't want any. A South African black believes that if he cannot have something, nobody else can have that.
Is that
That
so?
is that is their mentality. Yeah, he'll tell you straight. If I cannot have that scooter, you're not going to have it. And therefore, I'm going to steal it or destroy it. So we have been for 30 years now. The democracy is not working. It's not working. And they're still blaming the whites. They're still saying it's apartheid's fault because this country is in this. I mean, after 30 years, don't you think you should have done something? Don't you think you should have built something? In 30 years, they've built nothing. They've just broken down. I mean, their own babies in schools are falling in these toilets because there's no toilet. It's just a hole with a lid in their schools. I mean, when the whites were in power, those were their schools. If the whites stayed in power, all those toilets would have been taken out many years ago, and proper toilets would have been put in.
So it's quite obvious that this man is racist to the core. And I had similar conversations throughout the day. I must say I didn't record all of them because I didn't always feel comfortable recording. I had one conversation with a younger person. In general, there are not many young people. And this girl, she was 20 years old. I asked her, how does it feel like as a young woman to live in a town, a whites-only town, and if she has the desire to visit other places sometimes? And she told me she moved there with her parents when she was 10 years old, and she's having difficulties connecting with people in her age because there are not many. And her best friend, for instance, is moving to New Zealand, and still she loves this town. She doesn't want to leave. She wants to raise her children there. She said she was raised extremely conservative. That is also something that I learned about Orania. It's a very conservative place. And so, yeah, the people, they don't have much contact to the outside world. And they really live in their bubble. I felt like that time stands still. While I was engaging in conversations with different people, we were actually in a cafe. My children were drinking their hot chocolate and playing on their iPads, minding their own business, and I was around the corner because I didn't want them to hear what these people have to say. So when I went back to the table, there was an elderly woman, a very friendly woman, who approached me to first tell me that my children are very well behaved, and she was curious to know where we are from. So I told her we are originally from Ethiopia but lived in Germany and Holland and are currently on a tour discovering the African continent. And she was really impressed and asked me what moved me to come visit Orania. So I told her, yeah, I heard it's a whites only town, and I wanted to learn and see for myself what moves people to isolate themselves from the rest of society and move to Orania. So, and she was very open to answer my question. She said one of the main factors for her was safety. She herself had no Afrikaner's ancestry but her husband. They were married for 48 years. I must say they were a very friendly couple. And she also, I think several times she said, we are not racist here in this town. Of course, there are a few people who are racist, but I am not racist. Anyway, I gave her the benefit of the doubt and asked her what it takes to become a citizen of Orania. And she told me that they had to go through a screening, so you need to do a police screening. If you have one single record of a crime committed in the past, you will not be able to receive citizenship in Orania. She further told me that you have to do a test and that they were the first ones to do the test online. So I asked her, what kind of questions do they ask you in the test? So she responded that one important criteria is you have to speak fluently Afrikaans, and they will ask you questions that have to do with the values and with the history of Orania. And that is something that everyone told me, because I asked everyone, what does it take to become a citizen in Orania? And it was always mentioned that you must share their values. And this was also a very interesting conversation. The first guy that I had the convo with, who had very racist things to say, joined our conversation and watch what happens next. I was joking with them. I basically pretended that I want to stay there. And this man's reaction was so funny. Just watch it. If I decide I have the money to buy a land here or a house, if I decide to stay here and raise my kids, a very laid back lifestyle, do you think that is possible, or what is the criteria to live here?
No, you have to go, you have to get citizenship to live here.
In South African citizenship?
No, yeah, Orania.
You have your own citizenship?
Yes, for this, and you actually write an exam.
Huh?
You write exams.
Really?
And you have to pass it. We had to write those we were the first people to do it online.
Mm-hmm.
They tested the online service, but they're doing very little online lately. So just around the corner, there's an office where you go do your training.
Can I go there and just see and get information?
Yes, you can.
Around the corner?
Yes, right in the corner.
I can walk there?
Yes. So that's the way around.
Okay.
So you have to do the orientation and you have to pass it. We had to have that before we even moved here.
What kind of questions are they asking?
Oh, it's a lot about the Afrikaans
Culture.
Yes.
This is an interesting conversation with this lady.
I want to apply for citizenship. She just told me I should go around the corner.
Yeah, you won't be allowed.
I won't pass it.
No.
But I'm very good in languages. I speak 7 languages.
No, I understand. Our culture, you won't be able to follow our culture.
I won't be able to follow your culture. Why do you think so? I can follow the German culture,
Yeah, that's
Dutch.
different.
I'm
That's
very
different.
multicultural.
Yes, no.
You know,
no.
humans are very adaptive. They can
No,
adapt
no.
very quick.
We're also creatures of habit.
In the end of this conversation, the lady gave me a hot tip. There was an office where you can get more information about Orania and learn what it takes to become a citizen. The office was also around the corner, so I went there and I pretended that I'm interested in learning more about Orania and its inhabitants. What I found very interesting, the office which deals with citizenship and with cultural activities is called Orania Beweging, which means the Orania movement. So they consider themselves as a movement. And so I asked this lady how I can get more information, that I'm interested in finding out what it takes to become a citizen. And what happens next, I didn't expect this at all too. She offered me a free private guided tour through the city where I can learn firsthand from one of the first residents of this town about the town and its values and its structure and so many things. So of course I agreed, and it's funny because I actually planned to stay in this town for an hour maximum. I ended up being there for 6 hours. I was so excited to do this tour because it gave me the chance to ask important questions to someone who became one of the first settlers of this town. And the conversation was quite interesting. I felt how some of my questions made this man quite uncomfortable and how he sometimes rushed over them and gave me short answers, quickly switching the topic. And instead of answering my questions properly, this man was more interested in presenting his town with so much pride, talking about the infrastructure, what they have achieved. But anyway, I kept asking my questions, and one of the first questions that I asked was this one, for instance. I mean, you said in the beginning that you are an ethnic minority, right?
Correct.
How does it feel to be an ethnic minority, a white minority in a majority black country, and do you feel discriminated?
Oh, definitely. I'm sure to a big extent. But you know that we're not sitting back looking at that. We are shaping our own future, taking up the reins, and we are just doing our own thing without costing anybody anything. Isn't it nice?
How does discrimination against Afrikaners look like?
I'm sure they do discriminate, but I've been here now for 17 years. I love it inside here. I don't even go out anymore. I don't feel like it. But of course there is a lot of discrimination, but that doesn't bother us at all. We just carry it straight on and we do our own thing, and we treat everybody with respect, because we understand you have different cultures. And once you get to the point where you understand cultures and you respect people, what can I say?
Yes.
Then all of a sudden things make sense. That's why God created us different. We should enjoy it rather than point it out and try and convert people's culture. This is a place that works with solar power. You can see there's quite a few industries here. Eh?
Yes.
This is a motor mechanic. He specializes in German vehicles. Right next door to him there's a place that works with irrigation. There's a place that works with gas and glass.
As you can see, his answer to me reveals a very separatist mindset that reminds me on the system of apartheid. The idea that different cultures shouldn't mix, and that they don't really want to have anything to do with the rest of the country. I find this way of thinking very problematic, to be honest, especially coming from descendants of settlers who are not indigenous to the land and come to Africa and just want to be among themselves. I was thinking, why don't you do your project somewhere else? Anyway, I asked him also about the land before their arrival, and this was also a very interesting response. Watch this. I have one question. You said before you came here there was no trees, because I also see the surroundings are very more like savanna.
Look, this is the Karoo. This is it's like a desert.
Okay, and there was no inhabitants here before?
Well, look, this place stood empty when we got here.
Okay. It's hard to believe that there was nothing before their arrival, but anyway, I also asked him, what is the motivation for people to move to Orania? And this answer was also very interesting. Watch this. You said you will expand the city to host the next 15,000 residents,
Yes.
right? What is the main motivation for people to move to Orania?
We pushed around in a lot of places, and the biggest motivation is to become part of history and show people that if you do your own work, there is no such thing as work for certain people. Everybody should do their own thing, practice their own culture, speak the language which is dear to them, and that's the motivation. And the people that will fit in here will fit in, but you do get your more liberal people, they won't fit in, but they won't come here.
His answer reveals that the people in Orania take great pride in their Afrikaner ancestry and heritage, and he said it with so much pride, to become part of history. Yeah, what kind of history actually are we talking about? Anyways, I also asked him how Orania became such a safe place, and this is what he had to say. How come the city is so safe?
If you're inclined to do anything that you're not supposed to do, you will be put out of Orania. And look, everybody's got work. Nobody stands around. Everybody's got food on the table tonight. And people that work are happy. Happy people don't steal. We all very, very faithful to the law. We don't steal, we don't murder, we don't smoke different substances.
No drugs here as well.
No drugs whatsoever, it's not tolerated.
So if you commit a crime, you basically risk losing citizenship. So you risk a lot, right? So this punishment and the fact that you have to go through a police screening probably explains why Orania is such a safe place. Anyway, next I asked him what it takes for me to live in Orania. What are the criterias? And this is what he had to say. Watch this.
We all work in Orania, and if you want to come and stay here, you need to be a Christian, and you have to have the Afrikaner values, you have to be of the same culture, we have to speak Afrikaans, and of course have a plan. You're not going to come and lie around here.
Okay.
And of course you have to, as I said, go through that process to become a Orania. Once you're here, if you step out of line, you stand a chance to be pushed out of town. You can actually lose your position as a citizen of Orania.
His answer again reveals the importance of shared values to qualify for citizenship in Orania. And literally everyone mentioned the importance of following the culture and sharing the values and beliefs of the people of Orania to be able to live in this town. So I decided I want to learn more about their values. Besides Christianity, there are Protestants, have a lot of churches in town, but besides that, how do you learn about the values and culture of a people and a nation? Simply by looking at their monuments. Learn about their heroes. Who are their heroes? Who do they believe in? And this is what I did next. I visited the Monument Hill, which is a hill that overlooks the entire town. And what I found there is disgusting, to say the least. You will see the statues of men who went down in history as being one of the bloodiest, murderous people in the history of South Africa. Like, for instance, the statue of Hendrik Verwoerd, the architect of apartheid, or Daniel Francois Malan, who was the prime minister between 1948 and 1954 and implemented the system of apartheid, which enforced institutional racial segregation in the country. Last but not least, you will see the statue of Paul Kruger, who is considered as the father of the Afrikaner nation and was the then South African president. This man has blood on his hands, and I cannot understand why there is still a national park named after him, namely the Kruger National Park. It's a big shame. I mean, the fact that these people have erected the statues of these bloody murderers in their town, while the rest of South Africa decided it's better to dismantle them in the rest of the country, that says a lot already, right? Anyways, I left the town, I saw enough, and I drove around an hour until I reached the next town and asked a man at the gas station who was filling up my tank how he feels about Orania. And he said, "What? Wait a minute, you went there?" I said, "Yes." And he said he would never go there and that they will not treat him nicely. And I told him I was treated very nice, to be honest, and that people were very friendly. But I also believe him when he tells me that he will not be treated in the same way. Because after all, I felt that people really care a lot about their image in the outside world. They strive towards becoming a tourist destination and making tourism one of the main pillars of their economy. So they can see that I'm an outsider, that I'm not from South Africa. But when a South African black person would enter the town, I think that person will make a totally different experience. During the 6 hours that I spent in Orania, I only saw one single black man who was a courier delivering parcels to some of the shops. Anyways, I wanted to learn more about apartheid, and once I reached Cape Town, the first thing that I did, of course, was to visit Robben Island. A day before South Africa was celebrating the 30th Freedom Day of the country, which means that 30 years ago, in 1994, there were the first free and democratic elections in the country. That is unbelievable. I was 8 years at that time. This is not a long time ago. And what I learned on Robben Island was so painful. The emotions that this day has evoked in me, it will take months to process them. In fact, I believe that visiting Robben Island should be on the top of your bucket list when visiting Cape Town, because it will give you a better understanding of the system of apartheid and also its legacy, which is very visible in Cape Town. So what I loved most about my tour on Robben Island is the fact that the tour guides who guide you through the prison complex were themselves former inmates. And it was unbelievable and painful at the same time to learn how the system of apartheid was implemented on each and every level, fam. Like, for instance, for breakfast, the white inmates, because there were very few though white inmates on Robben Island, they would get white sugar for their tea, while the brown and colored inmates would get brown sugar. And guess what the black inmates would get? no sugar at all. Same goes with the uniform. While the colored people would get short sleeves, the white people would get long sleeves, the black inmates wouldn't get no sleeves at all. And it was very interesting to learn also that everything was by design, and the guide explained it perfectly. The reason why they treated the inmates differently was to divide and rule them, to create animosities and mistrust among the inmates, because a united group is very dangerous, right? So they were simply following the principle of divide and rule on each and every level. Like, their evilness knows no bounds. I was thinking to myself, even Shaitan must be jealous of their evil acts. And so while I was on Robben Island, I asked our tour guide, who was explaining the history of the island to us, and also the former inmate who guided us through the prison complex in which he was incarcerated for 7 years, about their opinion of Orania. And their response was quite clear. The former inmate, who I was unfortunately not allowed to record by video, I recorded his response with a voice recorder, and this is what he had to say. I have a question towards the city called Orania, the Afrikaners only settlement. 30 years after apartheid, and moving in actually having the plan to move towards unity. What do you think of a place like Orania?
Okay. Remember that Mr. Nelson Mandela, he is the one who taught about democracy. When they taught about democracy, they said in democracy the right to associate and the right to disassociate. So they're practicing their right.
I really loved his response because it's very simple, and I see it in a similar way. These people in Orania decided to dissociate themselves from a democratic society. The second guide that I asked the same question, who was, by the way, one of the best guides I ever had in my life, a brilliant guide, he was also very clear with his response. He responded by saying that, look, if these people don't want to integrate to our society, they have to pack their bags and leave and do their project somewhere else, because there is no way that apartheid can continue in this country. And I absolutely agree with my brother. And here is my conclusion of my visit to Orania. First, the people, yes, they are very friendly and welcoming, and they claim to not be racist, and they just have the desire to empower themselves. But I believe that if the fathers and architects of this bloody murderous apartheid regime are your heroes, sorry, then you have no humanity in you, and you are racist to the core. I also realized that these people have no awareness and zero consciousness about their own racism. They don't realize how racist they are. Similarly, there is no remorse and no regret for this bloody apartheid system that they benefited from. And it's very interesting to see how they perceive the loss of their privilege as discrimination. What I also found very ironic was how people in Orania were boasting about having no crimes, and that the city is so safe because everyone follows the law, and that they are good citizens who don't steal, who don't kill, you name it. These people forget that their forefathers and their national heroes, right, the people that they look up to, committed the worst crimes against humanity. Anyway, these people, they are not just delusional, they are funny too. People that I spoke to always stressed how peaceful the people are, that they just want to be left alone and want to live in peace, that they don't want war. Of course they don't want war. Like, what are we talking about? They know damn well that they could never win a war in the first place, and that their town will be leveled to the ground within hours, if not minutes. Jokes aside, I believe that a place like Orania should not be allowed to exist on the African continent. It's in fact a big, big shame and low-key embarrassing, to be honest. And sadly, this is possible only in Africa. Can you imagine the same thing happening in the Western world? Like the one time when there was a black neighborhood and community that was economically thriving, self-sufficient and flourishing, as in the case of what we remember today as the Black Wall Street, do you know how that ended? Just Google the Tulsa massacre and find out yourself. Let me know what you think in the comments. I really look forward to read about your thoughts on this extremely controversial topic. Do you believe a place like Orania should exist on the African continent? And how do you think should we deal with communities like that on the African continent? If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel, and I look forward to see you next week. Bye!